Okay, so we're not focusing on one of the papers specifically in this session, but we're having a look at vocabulary and important aspects to know about vocabulary. We get a lot of questions asking about, you know, how can I improve my vocabulary? How can I work on it? So hopefully we're going to be answering some of those questions today, okay? So we're looking at some specific aspects of vocabulary. We can't do all of them in one session. So we're having a look at these ones you can see here. And also some of the kind of common mistakes that come up that people make related to vocabulary. And also some ways of recording it, finding it, using it, so that it's not passive, so that it becomes active vocabulary. Okay, so let's start by looking kind of generally at vocabulary. So we're going to look at 4 words and think about what they mean to us. Okay, so the first one is yummy. So when you hear the word yummy, what do you think of? Okay, yeah, delicious, tasty. How do you feel when you see that word? Okay, very good, Angela. It's a good feeling, yeah? It's a very nice feeling related. Dear, started off the hunger things again. Yeah, I think it's quite a positive word, isn't it? Yes, we've got mouth-watering, we've got appetizing, delicious food, things like that. What about exquisite? What do you think of when you see the word exquisite? Okay, that's quite nice, Shyla. Okay, very nice, Angela. Good taste. I like that. Okay. How does it have a positive feeling? What do you think of when you think of that? Okay, so yeah, very high quality, maybe a bit posh. Yes. Okay. What kinds of things might you describe as exquisite? Okay, yes, Jabba, food. Okay, maybe. Sweets, okay, yes, it could be something it's usually very fine, isn't it? If we have something that's exquisite, very neat, I like that one. Yes, it's very delicate, Annie, like that, that's very good. Yes, exquisite cloth, exquisite fabric, that's very good. Okay, what about a challenge? How does that make you? What do you think about when you see that? Okay, something intense. Could be something difficult or hard. How do we feel positive or do we feel negative about that kind of word? Okay, that's quite a tricky one, isn't it? You can think of it in both ways. You can think of it positively and negatively. And how might you describe a challenge? What kind of adjective could you put in front of that? Okay, so like a tough challenge. Okay, or a challenge you need to overcome, a big challenge. Yeah, any others? IELTS 9. Okay, good point, Patrick. That's definitely a challenge. Okay. And what about the next one? Progress. What do you think of when you see the word progress? Okay, like an improvement or a success. Okay, Shirley, you think that's a positive? Anybody feel any negative feelings towards progress? No, we've all got very positive feelings there. Okay, that's great. And what kind of words might we use with progress? Okay, Artyom, so definitely we make progress. Okay, yes, what other words could we put in front of it? Perhaps some adjectives. Okay, we could say gradual process, slow process. Okay, yeah, or maybe we could talk about good progress. Okay, so we're thinking about the word, but there's one word, there's a whole area around every word that we need to think about if we're going to really use those words correctly. Okay, so we've looked at some of those aspects. You know, we've looked at other words that you can use with them. We've looked at whether they have a positive feeling or whether they have a negative feeling. Other things you can think about is the level of formality. So is it formal or informal? So which word there is informal of those four? Yeah, yummy is very informal. Okay. And which ones do you think are quite neutral? Yeah, I would say a challenge and progress. They're generally useful. We could use those in lots of different situations. Okay. And which two words are adjectives? Okay, exactly, exquisite and yummy. And challenge and progress are what forms of the words? Okay, very good. So then we're looking at nouns. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. And then we can also look at combinations. So we talked about yummy food, we talked about exquisite cloth, difficult challenge or a tough challenge. So all of these things are things that you need to know in order to say that you know a word. It's not enough just to know the meaning. Obviously, that's one thing, but there are lots of other areas that you should be aware of, including all of these that we've looked at here, to make sure you can really genuinely use that word when you're speaking, when you're writing, and know that you've got it exactly correctly. Okay. So we're going to have a look at some of all of the aspects, basically, that you need to think about when you're thinking about a word. So if we look at the words there, we've got two words in bold that have the same pronunciation. So what is the difference with those two words? What are we highlighting here, do you think? Any ideas? Okay, well, yeah, you've got different forms of the word. What else is different about those two words? Okay. Okay, what we're really thinking of specifically here is the spelling, because they both sound exactly the same, but they have different spelling. Okay, so spelling is one aspect of vocabulary that you have to get right, and particularly for the IELTS, it's very important to get that right. Okay. What about the second one? What do you think we're looking at with the second one? Okay, very good, James. Yeah, okay, so we have 1 minute, and then we have minute. So the way that you pronounce a word and the stress, where the stress falls, makes a big difference in how you use that word. Very important to get the pronunciation and the stress right. Okay. Okay, what area are we looking at in the third one? What's the difference between the two sentences? Okay, very good. So it's word formation. So in the first one, we've got an adjective and a noun, and in the second one, we've got a verb and an adverb. So you need to know what form of the word is, but also all of the other forms. Okay, what's the noun, what's the verb, what's the adjective, what's the adverb? You really need to know all of the different ways to do it. Remember that in the writing, one of the ways of having a range of vocabulary or paraphrasing is using word formation as well. Okay, what about the next one? Okay, so yeah, the gender is an issue here. So this is what we call collocation, yeah? So got to get the right words together, the right combinations. We can say a handsome man, but we wouldn't particularly use handsome with a woman. Yes, you could say a beautiful woman. Okay, what about the next one? What are we looking at here? What's the difference between the two? Okay, it's not exactly voice, but I think, yeah, the verb forms. Okay, so in one we've got a gerund, and one we've got a an infinitive. Call this collocation. But you know, verb patterns or verb forms is another way to think about it. Do we use the gerund? Do we use the infinitive? Do we use the infinitive without to? Do we use a sentence? All very important. Okay, what about the next one? What do you think the difference is between these two words? Okay, very good, excellent. So what we call connotation, okay? So does it have a positive meaning or does it have a negative meaning? Very, very important. It's so easy to just get the wrong form of the word, the negative when you're looking for the positive, and it completely changes everything that you're saying. Okay, so connotation is the feeling that we get from the word. Okay, what about the next one? What's the difference there? Okay, yeah, Raman's got it. Children, kids, formal or informal, okay? So we call this register, okay? So the register is, that's right, James, the level of formality. Again, extremely important for all aspects of the IELTS. You know, when you're tasked to essay, you have to make sure that your register is formal. If you're doing the general training letter, you have to make sure you understand the difference between informal and formal, depending on the different types of letters. And then again, when you're speaking, you need to use informal language, otherwise it sounds very strange. Okay, and what about the last one? What's here? Okay, very good, exactly. So the difference between straightforward literal word like begin and using some kind of expression or idiom like get the ball rolling. And again, that's going to be affected by the register. In some cases, it's okay to use idioms. In other cases, it's not going to be possible. The formal language, we don't really want to use idiomatic expressions, okay? So if you look at all of those words in red on the right-hand side of the slide, those are all of the things that you need to know to say, yes, I understand this word and I can use this word. If you don't know all of those aspects, you don't really know how to use it, okay? We're not ever using words in isolation. We're always using them, combining them together in phrases and sentences. So you need to know how that works, okay? And we're going to look at just some of those areas today, and we have other webinars where we look at other areas. So those four there are what we're going to specifically look at today. Yeah, right, there's also differences between accents, and there are differences in vocabulary and the actual words, of course, between British English, American English, other types of English. So that could be something that's important as well. Yeah, very good point. So let's have a look at some spelling, first of all. That's going to be our first area. Something that a lot of English people get wrong as well, I have to be honest. And there's certain areas that are actually quite common areas of mistakes. Yes, you're right, Jebba, spelling as well is different between British and American English, so that's something else to be aware of. So one of the things that is always quite often causes problems for people is it one consonant or is it two consonants, okay? Yes, you're right, actually, James, I-E and E-I. There is a saying, we say I before E except after C. Of course, that doesn't always work, but it does work in a lot of cases. So C will be followed with EI, and a lot, quite most of the other cases, it will be IE, but there are some exceptions. Okay. So, yeah, I before E except after C, the letter C. Okay. So yeah, double consonants. Okay, Z's got it already. So in this case, we would only want to put one C. Okay. And with the next one, we have double C. Yeah. Okay, so those kind of double M, double C, double R, they do quite often cause issues. So that would be something to, you know, pay attention to. We also often have vowels or syllables that we don't stress. So the sound of the vowel is not clear, and that means that you end up making spelling mistakes. You spell them the way that they sound, and that actually ends up being wrong. So what's the mistake with that one? This is a very common one. Okay, some of you got it right, but some of you haven't. It's with an A. I have to be honest, a lot of English people get this wrong as well. Yeah. So it sounds like separate, but actually the spelling is separate. Okay. And the next one. Yes, okay, so we're missing out the second E. Okay, so just be careful with those unstressed syllables. They do sometimes cause a few problems. Okay, and again, there's a lot of letters that we don't pronounce in English, or we pronounce groups of letters in the same as well. We spell groups of letters, you know, where it sounds like there's only one. So yes, it's often the T sound. So what about here? Okay, very good. That silent N is often a problem. And what about this one? Okay, so yes, again, the N is missing. We don't really pronounce it, but you have to spell it, okay? Also, yeah, things like the castle and listen, that missing T can often be a problem. Or words where the S is silent. Okay, very good point, Shyla. The honest. Some words we pronounce the H, sometimes we don't pronounce the H. Okay, very good, like hustle. Okay, yeah, KN, and we don't pronounce the K. WR, we don't pronounce the R. Sorry, we don't pronounce the W, we just pronounce the R. Receipt. So yeah, there's a lot of tricky words to spell there, yeah. And sometimes words are just very similar, and then there's a confusion between them. So in this sentence, what would be? Yes, okay, so affect is the noun, and effect is, sorry, affect is the verb, and effect is the noun. So in that sentence, you would have to spell it with an E, okay? And this is a very common mistake I see all the time. Yeah, so that is loose, which is an adjective, and the verb should be with one O, so it's lose. And the only difference in pronunciation is the S, the pronunciation of the S. Okay, so that's quite a common one. I saw someone put quiet and quite up. That is also quite a common mistake that I've seen a lot. And people tend to make the same spelling mistake. So, you know, very good idea to have a book to record the spellings, you know, revise, go over the ones that you have questions with. Yeah, so quiet is shh, quiet, the first one, i.e., then quite, rather. Okay. Yeah, and then there's quit as well. I think you're confusing it. Okay, and then there's some words that are just generally difficult. Yeah, things like convenient, convenience. I think the IE again there. What about this word here? What's the correct spelling there? Okay, yes. Okay, so we're missing the R, entrepreneur. And how about this one? Okay, good. Yes, it's a double N questionnaire. Okay, so just be careful with some of those. All right. So spelling is super, super important for IELTS. Remember that with the listening test, for example, if you don't get the spelling right, it's wrong. Even if you've got the answer, you have to get the spelling 100% right. Okay. Program with double M-E is British English. Program that ends in an M is American English. You will find that British people are starting to use both spellings in those kind of words. So, you know, it's not necessarily going to be an issue. Travel is always one L though. Okay. Yeah, there's quite a few mistakes there. Okay. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I before E except after C. But it doesn't work in all cases, so it's not 100% like anything, okay? Pillar is double L, okay? There's no issue with using American spelling, okay? Or American pronunciation or anything like that. It's totally acceptable and, you know, everybody's aware of that kind of thing, okay? All right, absence with a C, Pranav, okay? And traveling can be one L or two Ls. One L is American, two L's is British, but it doesn't matter, okay? So now we're gonna look at pronunciation. We're gonna move on here. So obviously you can't actually pronounce, but we're gonna have a look at some of the stress and the number of syllables, because we have a lot of silent syllables, okay? So let's have a look at these words. So if we look at the first one, how many syllables in that word? Got quite a range there. Yes, it should be 3 because the OR is not pronounced. It's comfortable. Okay, so we miss out. Very, very common to miss out syllables in long words. So it's only 3 syllables. Okay, what about this one? Okay, and what's the silent letter in this case? Okay, very good. Okay, and stress is on the first syllable. Okay, what about this one? Okay. 3. Okay, how do we pronounce the CH in this case? Okay, very good. Yeah, so it's chaotic. Okay, very tricky word for a lot of people. Chaos and chaotic. Okay. What about this one? Okay, 2 syllables. What's a bit different about this word? Yes, okay, Hi's got it. Yeah, it's a duty. Okay, so it's a U sound, not an U sound in English. DU, like duke, duty, due. Okay, DUE. All of those sounds are like that. Okay, what about this one? Okay, good. Only 1 syllable. What's the tricky pronunciation in this case? Yeah, the GHT. So the GHT is pronounced as simply as a T. Yeah, height. Okay, so GHT always reduces down just to a T. Okay. How about this one? Okay, what's the tricky? Yeah, you're already ahead of me. So the S is silent in those kinds of words. Okay, island. And how about this one? Okay, very good. There's just 2. How would you pronounce that? Can you write? Yeah, the GH is, okay, yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah, so thorough. Okay, it's very, very short. Thorough, the GH is completely silent in that case. Okay. How about this one? Okay, yeah, it's actually 3. What's silent? It's not the, yeah, it's the second E, which is silent. Vegetable. Yes, you're right, Pam, like the get part. So it's vegetable, we don't pronounce the E. And this is another tricky one that people have problems with. Yeah, there's actually 2 possible ways. So the I you can kind of pronounce or not. So it could be vehicle or vehicle. I would pronounce it with 3. Yeah. So vehicle is probably the best way to pronounce it. So, you know, spelling and pronunciation in English, particularly bizarre, doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. So you really need to have the spelling and have the pronunciation down pat and know exactly what you're doing with all of these words. Be very careful with silent letters and be very careful with syllables that we don't pronounce, like comfortable, separate, general, business, all of those kind of words where we just shrink down for the pronunciation. Okay, so let's have a look now at the word formation. So as I was saying before, you need to know all the forms of a word, and that includes the negative forms. Okay, so in this case, we're looking at the noun, the verb, the adjective, and then the negative adjective. Okay, so practice, what would be the verb for practice? Okay, good. So we change the spelling, but we don't change the pronunciation. Okay. And in terms of the adjective, okay, very good. And if we make that negative, that's okay, very good, Jay. No, it's impractical. Okay. Remember, a lot of words beginning with P or B or M have IM as their negative prefix. Okay, so we've got successful. What's the noun? Okay, very good. Good spelling there, guys. The verb. Okay, and what was the opposite of successful? Okay, very good. Unsuccessful or failure. That's another way of doing it. Okay, so we talk about to care for someone. What would be the noun? Okay, very good. Doesn't change. Okay, and what would be the positive adjective, if I can put it that way? Okay, very good. There are other ones like caring. Some of you put caring. And then the negative one, very good. We change to careless. Okay, so there's no prefix in this case. Okay, enjoyable. Okay, yeah, enjoyment. Remember, we're doing the noun first, then enjoy. And what's the negative adjective? Enjoyment, enjoy, enjoyable, unenjoyable. Okay, very good. Okay, useful. Okay, very good. Use, and the verb. Okay, usage is another one. I mean, so there's often more than one. Notice the pronunciation's different. We have use as the noun and use as the verb. And again, full often becomes less. So useful, useless. Okay. You have to do it like useless. You can't use a prefix in that case. Unused is another possibility in a different case. Okay, good. Believe is the verb, and what's the adjective? Okay, I like, yeah, believable. Okay, it's believable, and if it's not believable, it's unbelievable. Okay, very good. Okay, so again, as I said, make sure you know all of those forms. We have quite a range of different negative prefixes that we use. Again, there's no logical way of doing it, so you do need to know how we form the negative. There's also the negative forms of the nouns. There's also prefixes like over and under and re. So those again are also words that you can use. Okay, yeah, got logical, illogical, logic. Yeah, so just it's something you can do as an exercise yourself, is just to practice. Do I know all of these different forms? No, priceless means that it's so valuable you cannot put a price on it. Okay, so it's a very positive thing. Okay. Right, so next one is collocation. So in this case, we Very, very important. And one of the key things that you need to do to get a 7 in vocabulary, whether it be speaking or writing, is to use the correct collocation. Okay, that's a big, big difference between a 6 and a 7 and above. Okay, somebody who's a level 6 is going to make quite a few mistakes with the collocation. Somebody with a level 7, a band 7, is going to show evidence of collocation. Someone who is a band 8 is going to consistently use the right collocation throughout their speaking or their writing. So it's extremely difficult to get this. Okay. So again, you know, when you get a word, don't look at a word in isolation. Look at the word in terms of the phrase. What other words are used with it? Okay. So a lot of collocation debate is formed with these hot verbs. We usually call them things like do, make, go. Okay. Okay, good. So make a complaint, file a complaint is totally possible as well. Yeah. What about the next time? With a presentation? I haven't quite got it. Not really. I do. Okay. Yes. Zishan, you've got it. I mean, I gave a presentation. Okay. So give a presentation is the collocation there. Okay. What about this one? I really, yeah, we've got to enjoy. You could also say love her company, enjoy her company. Okay. What about this one here? Oh, value. I like that, James. That works as well. Okay, very good. Yes, I did my best. You could also say I tried my best. That would work. Okay. What about this one? Yeah, I would tend to say we made an arrangement. Yeah, we made an arrangement to meet later on. Okay, any other verb and noun collocations you can think of? Maybe with make or do. Can you think of some common, or they could be adjective and noun collocations? Okay, yeah, make a mistake, very good. Set the table, okay. You got to give me 2 words now, or otherwise I don't know if they work. Okay, take a photo, make sure. Set fire to something, very good. Okay, okay, exactly, Edna. Lions roar, they don't shout. Okay, all right, we've got some nice. Pay a visit, hi, yeah, that's very nice collocation. Yeah, okay, so wear makeup, a deep sleep. Yeah, you know, we have very specific adjectives that we use. You know, heavy rain, or strong wind, or a deep sleep. Okay. And also we have these prepositions. So again, this is really, really important. It seems like such a small thing, but it makes a big difference. Getting the right preposition with all of these nouns. We call them dependent prepositions. Okay, so they come after these words and they always go together. Okay, so if we say impact, we would talk about having an impact. Okay, very good, James. On, always on. Okay, cause harm. Okay, good. To. Okay, with risk, what's the preposition? Okay, very good. You're always at risk. Okay, and after associated. Okay, very good. Associated with. And take action. Okay, to address this issue. Okay, so again, like I say, don't learn a word on its own, learn the word with its prepositions. Almost most of the words, I think, most of the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives have a preposition that you use with them. So you really need to think of them together, you know, focus on, influence on, all of these kinds of words. They're very, very useful. Okay. So just the last thing to look at here. So this is all very good, but you know, you've got to learn how to use this vocabulary. So we're going to now look at some of the different things that you can do. Okay, so you know, the best thing to do is to see things in context. Okay, so you read articles, you watch documentaries, you listen to podcasts, you will get these combinations exactly as they're being used, and you know, you can make a note of them. You know it's good English, you know it's correct, and then you can then use them yourself. So I would really recommend getting newspapers or getting articles on websites and actually using them as a resource for, you know, for finding prepositions, for finding collocation. You know, there's lots of things you can use. There's a very good website called The Conversation, which I use a lot with my students. They have articles on all of the kinds of topics that IELTS has, reading and writing and stuff with. So that's a very useful resource, I would say, for academic articles. Works very well. Okay, maybe at the end I can put it up. Okay, it's called theconversation.com. Okay, I'll do that at the end. Okay. Yeah, and don't just read them, but you know, focus on then specific things, find the collocations, find the prepositions, things like that. Okay. Then when you've found them, clearly you need to record them in some way. Yeah, that, no, not quite. Quizlet is very good for things like that. Yeah. You know, you can, on Quizlet, you have a word on one side, and then on the other side, you could put the preposition or the collocation or the phonetic spelling, something like that. Okay, so Quizlet is a great place to have vocabulary banks. Okay, and try and learn things, you know, rather than making lists. You know, you have your notebook, but do spider diagrams, learn vocabulary based on topics or based on certain aspects. Don't just write long lists of vocabulary. You will never look at them again. Okay, so you need to put them in a way which is visually works, visually jumps out at you so that you'll learn it. Okay. And again, as we've said, you know, very important to get the collocations, to get everything that works together. There is, we can see up there, there is a website called justtheword.com. You put in a word and it gives you all of the collocations to use that with that word, the adjectives, the prepositions, the verbs, everything that goes with it. So it's a great resource for getting the right collocation. Another one is the academic word list, which has all of these words that are the most useful words for your essay writing. They have all of those kind of words that come up again and again. They have all of the families, so you can learn every part of the word formation. And it's a great resource. You know also then that it's academic, that it's formal, and therefore useful for the essays. And then use it, produce it. You've got to turn it from something which is passive to something which is active, which means you must write sentences, use it when you're speaking, play around with the language. That's the way that you're going to learn it. Okay. All right, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Annalie, for the presentation and lesson. So yeah, thank you guys for taking part and suggesting some really good answers there. So well done. Excellent. And yeah, thank you, Zishan, for posting the link there in the chat. That's really helpful. So guys, while Annalie has been presenting this lesson today, I've been answering some of your questions in the Q&A. There's been some really great questions this week on different aspects of vocab. So we will have some time now to discuss any other questions you have. So feel free to add any questions about vocabulary or any general questions you have into the Q&A, and we'll discuss them in a moment. And yeah, I can see you've put the link there, Annalie, to the conversation as well. Yeah, looks like a good resource. I'll need to check that out. Yeah. Before we look at your questions, I would just like to do a little bit of promotion for our speaking and writing evaluation service that we offer on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. If you're interested in improving your writing band score, one of the best ways to do this is to get a qualified examiner to look over your writing, to give you an estimated score, and to let you know what you can do to improve your writing in each of the different categories. So if you're interested in that, you can send in your writing to our website and we'll take a look at it for you and give you a detailed report on how you can improve. We offer a similar service as well with the speaking test. So you can book a mock test with a speaking examiner and we'll give you feedback on your speaking performance. So I'm just putting the link to that in the chat just now. We have some other resources on reading and listening. It's our IELTS Explained video lesson series. And in that series, we go through each different type of question in a specific IELTS test. And we show you different strategies you can use to tackle that. So yeah, Shabazz, if you want, you can write into the website and we can arrange that for you if it's for speaking or for writing. Okay, drop us an email and we can discuss that further. So, right, guys, shall we take a look at some of your questions? So, Annalie, are you ready for first question here?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I've got a question from Mohammed. Mohammed is asking, can we please explain the gerund? What is a gerund?
Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay, so a gerund is the ing form of the verb and it turns a verb into a noun.
There you go. Yep. Yep, exactly, Mohammed. I hope that's clear. So for maybe an example, you could say, smoking is bad for you. In that case, the smoking is usually a verb, but in this case, it's the subject of the sentence. It becomes a noun. Okay. Ronak, when do we use that? Any rules? Typically, when you want the verb to be a subject, a noun for a sentence. Swimming is fun. Playing football is enjoyable. These are all examples of the gerund. Okay. Right. Sorry, Annalie, I kind of jumped in there. I really enjoy grammar. So
like
I'm a proper grammar geek. So I get excited when I get to explain grammar rules. Okay, let's see. So question here about the vocab. This is from Anwar. Anwar is asking about if I use American spelling instead of British spelling, will it be marked as wrong?
No, it won't be marked as wrong. American spelling is just as acceptable as British spelling, in the same way that if you do your speaking and you have an American accent or any other type of accent because of where you've learned English, that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. You can use American vocabulary, you can use American spelling.
Yeah, there was a question a bit earlier on about what if I mix the two. I think Radislava was asking, if I sometimes use the British version of the word and sometimes use the American version, would that be a problem? Would they be penalized for this?
I mean, it's best if you're consistent. But to be honest, in terms of spelling, I don't think the examiner would pay that much attention to it. I think the only area where you might have a worry if you're kind of mixing very American slang with British slang, and then it just gets all a bit confusing. That could be a problem. But you know, if you write color with a OUR and then write honor, you know, OR later on, I really don't think the examiner would pay that much attention to it.
Yeah, I'm glad that is actually the exact answer I gave in the Q&A there. So I'm glad we're in agreement about that. Excellent. Yeah, the one thing I said related to that was that, increasingly a lot of native speakers are kind of mixing the two anyway as English becomes more globalized. So, you know, this idea of a purely British variety of English is sort of maybe less important than it used to be, I think, particularly for IELTS. Let's see. So I could see a couple of requests for the recording of this session, Lakshmi and Wejdan. So I'm just putting the link to that in the chat just now. You'll be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel. It should be up tomorrow. So let's see, another question here from Ashish, who is asking, can we use idioms in IELTS writing and in the speaking test?
You can certainly use them in the speaking test. You don't really want to use them in the essay because idioms are not academic English. If you do, you should put it in inverted commas to show that you understand that you're using it as an idiom. But I would prefer to avoid them. I think it's a bit risky in the task 2 essay. If you're doing general training and the task 1 is an informal letter, then it's going to be okay there. But a warning, don't overuse idioms. You know, we do use them, but we don't use them that much. We're not filling every sentence with idioms constantly. And if you do that, it's going to sound a bit weird. So, you know, a couple here and there if it comes naturally, but, you know, avoid thinking every single answer I give in the speaking test I need to say, you know, I'm barking up the wrong tree, or it's raining cats and dogs. Yeah, it's just not that normal, not that usual.
Yeah, definitely. I think focusing more on collocations will be really useful for you, both in the writing and the speaking, because it's a good way to show awareness of higher level vocabulary while still sounding quite natural. Hi there, Ishrar. We are welcome into the session. We're just discussing different questions about vocabulary and any general IELTS topics. So if you have any questions, you can add them to the Q&A. You can also watch the recording for this session on our YouTube channel, and the link is in the chat there. There are a couple of good questions here in the chat, actually, about learning vocabulary. You know, is watching a movie a good way to learn English and to develop your vocabulary, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think any resource is useful. Just be aware that, you know, the language that's in a film is unlikely to be academic English. You know, it's going to be, could be quite slang, or it could be, you know, focused on a very specific type of English. So just be aware of that. It's not going to be useful for your task 2 writing, but it could be useful for just collocation, expressions, things like that. Yeah, maybe TV programs. Just be aware of the kind of register of these different types, and don't take them as a good resource for academic English.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, a question from Jabber. Jabber is not asking about food today, which is good. It's Jabber is asking, is it a good idea to know the synonyms and antonyms of the new vocabulary that we record?
Yeah, I think that is a really good way of recording it as well. Have a couple of synonyms, have an antonym. That's all part of understanding the language, being able to play with the language. You know, test yourself, have a look at an article, how many words in that article do you know the synonyms of? How many words in that article do you know an antonym for? And, you know, play with the language, manipulate the language. That is the best way to improve on it. You've got to produce it. You've got to use it. It can't just be passive.
Definitely, definitely. Now a couple of related questions here. One is from Nada. This is quite a general question. How can I improve my speaking? When I can't start talking, I can't speak or explain. So Nada, that's maybe a bit too general. It's hard for us to give you feedback, you know, without knowing exactly, you know, what areas you need to improve, whether it's trying to get ideas or whether, you know, you have problems with fluency, it takes you too long to find the correct words. If you can give us a bit more detail, we can try and give you some suggestions there. Swar has a very specific request here, which is that I'm stuck at band 6. How can I improve to a band 7 or 7.5? I'm learning collocations, but I find them difficult to use when I'm speaking. Any suggestions for Swar there for how they can kind of improve maybe their fluency or the use of vocabulary when speaking?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, you know, manipulating the language, that's important. When you do have new vocabulary, you do have to force it a little bit. You know, you have to try and use it. And I know that that might seem a bit strange at the beginning, but then as you do that, it will become, you know, it'll become active vocabulary, and eventually it will become like all of the more simple vocabulary that you already use without thinking. So, you know, you've just got to sort of make that jump forward, and you know, it will take time, but record it, find it, record it, use it. Yeah, that's the only thing I can say for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to, you know, create new sentences using the vocabulary, as you said, rather than learning lists, whether it's writing sentences, using the new vocab to answer practice questions. Are you also just listening and reading as much as possible, because the more exposure you have to the new vocabulary, the easier it will be for you to produce it. So again, as you said, Annalie, it does take time, you know, to build a stronger vocabulary. So just practice there, Swar, can help you as well. Right, let's see, guys, we have time for a couple more questions before we wrap up today. So Saswati, I think we answered your question. Is it mandatory to write down words with a British spelling? No, it's not. You can use either one. Related question from Artyom, though, can we use both American and British English answers in the listening section?
Yes, they accept British spelling and American spelling in the listening, so that's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, excellent. Good. Let's see. A question from Alain, who says he has difficulty listening, particularly understanding different accents, such as Australian or American accents. I'm glad you don't find our British accents difficult, Alain. You're probably in a minority there. But yeah, any suggestions for helping Alain understand the American or Australian accents? Because they do in IELTS.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, exposure is really, really important. You need to listen to a range of accents. So, you know, the BBC, that will give you British accents, but you can go on to CNN, for example, not advertising CNN, but, you know, you can use an American website, and then, you know, you'll get exposure to American language. There's quite a few Australian TV programs that you could access, and then you can get, so you know, you need to expose yourself to a range of accents, and you know, gradually you'll get more familiar with all of those different accents, and it will become easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, often it's a case of listening to them for a while, and you start to tune in to the just the slight differences between them, and that can, you know, really help you when you do hear that accent again. It makes it easier to understand. I mean, even, you know, for native speakers, very proficient users, when you hear a very different accent, it can take a little while just to readjust what you expect to hear. So again, Aline, you know, more practice can help you there.
I also, sorry, I just
Yeah.
recommend for the listening that
Mm,
as well as doing kind of focused listening, a good activity is just to have something on in the background and don't really pay that much attention to it. You know, you can be doing something else, but your brain will still be processing the rhythm of that. And the rhythm is often the thing that makes a language difficult to understand, a different language. So doing that, if you do that kind of quite frequently, just play it in the background and you'll just become more familiar with the rhythm and you'll get used to it, and that will actually make the comprehension easier.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm learning languages, like recently, I've been trying to improve my Mandarin, and I listen to podcasts a lot in Chinese. When I'm out running, when I'm in the house, and even if I'm not focusing on it, you know, 100% of the time, part of me, part of my brain is aware and listening, and I do find that's helping me to improve my vocabulary. So, you know, that's definitely, yeah, definitely helpful. Okay, guys, I'm afraid we are going to have to wrap up with the session today. So I'm sorry if we didn't cover all your questions. You can ask them as comments on our YouTube channel. We do go in to that and answer your questions there. So please add any other questions you have to our YouTube channel. That'd be great. And again, we won't be able to share the presentation with you, but you can watch the video. It'll be up on YouTube tomorrow in case you want to review anything we covered today. So yeah, I just want to say a very big thank you to Annalie for presenting and tackling all your questions, including tricky grammar related ones. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, thanks for
Cheers.
everything. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys, for joining us. We have a number of other webinars coming up in the next few weeks, so we hope you can join us for another session soon. Thanks again, guys. Yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye for now, and best of luck.
Guys.
If you're planning to take your tests soon, good luck to
Fingers
you.
crossed.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye for now.